No.
Stupid.
No, not at all.
No, it doesn't
So
make sense.
you got to ask yourself these silly because you know what? No one has an answer to them, and every answer they have is arrogant. It's egotistical because they think, oh well, they can't explain it, and they don't want to be wrong because if they do decide and realize that the Earth is an oval and the sun just flings back and forth across us, it goes up one way, back another, up one way, back another, up way. It doesn't go around the Earth because if it did, it would get closer and further away. It would get closer and further away. But it's not doing that, is it, Riley?
No.
So they're wrong. They're idiots, and they're playing me for an idiot, and I'm not an idiot. And I'm looking at your mistakes, and I'm not listening to your feeble religious bullshit. And your sign, don't listen to NASA. Holy shit, don't listen to NASA. They are completely owned by the government, okay? And they don't want you to know the truth. If you knew the truth, Riley, do you know why we haven't landed on the moon yet and we're never colonized there yet? It's because we were told to leave. We were literally told to leave. And we were escorted out of there by several ships from the moon, okay? And I've seen it in black and white.
Oh, that means
So
it must be
there's
true.
no fucking telling me that we own anything. We never did. We never will. We're pawns. We're little slaves. But
Pawns
some
to
of
who,
us
though?
are rebellious. Some of us want answers, and some of us want to know.
Pawns to
And
who,
I
though?
want to know, and I want my kids to know, and I want my
Keep
kids'
asking.
kids
Keep
to
asking.
know, and I want all my family members to know.
Ma, you say pawns, but pawns to who?
What?
Well, you said we're pawns to, well, whatever, right? Well, you're pawns to whom? I'm asking.
In the beginning,
Oh, she
they
stuttered.
say the people that created Earth came from a planet called Nibiru.
What are the name of
You've
these
heard of it.
people?
Nibiru is a planet. It's the 12th planet in our solar system. They haven't found it yet because it's too far away and our telescopes can't see it. And
How does she know about this?
Inky and Enlil,
Don't I know about this?
they are the creators of what
I
you call
see,
gods.
I see.
Your
Okay.
gods that you keep talking about, you go to church every fucking week to pray for people you don't even know who are. Anyway, these people created everything. They created the egg. They explained how they created the egg. They have pictures, documentaries. They have tablets. They have Bibles. They explain everything in black and white. They don't lie. They didn't fabricate it. They didn't embellish it. They just wrote what they did, wrote what they saw. These tablets are hundreds of millions of years old. Okay?
Bro, she
The Earth
sounds like
is
she's
so much
explaining it
older than
really
you think it is.
like a shonen anime.
And we've been around for at least 1 billion years.
I don't know what
But
the fuck
humans man has only been around for a couple 100 million. And again, so Enki decided that,
3 million, a couple hundred
and
million.
Enlil, they were tired and started arguing. The original races, Riley, were basically what Layla is. They're transsexuals. So, not transsexuals. What are they called? Hermaphrodites. They had their own body parts, so
Layla's my sister,
they didn't need another male or female to have a baby. They could do it themselves. And so this went on for many, many, many millenniums, you know. And what happened was they started,
Not too sure.
they weren't doing so good. The race that they created wasn't such a good idea. They were fighting. Some of their children were a little messed up. They just didn't like them, so they wiped them out. Okay, and when they came back and they created another race,
Okay.
They decided that they were tired of mining all this gold and things and minerals they needed to keep their planet and themselves alive. So they decided that they were going to create this man, I think. Okay, this human. And if you look up what Hugh means, it means means God.
What am I listening to?
Earth. Hugh is earth. It means man. So human. No one knows what the Hugh means, right? But that's what it is. It means earth. Anyway, so they were created from Earth. Everyone thinks they were created from monkeys, but they weren't because chimpanzees, monkeys, and apes weren't here then. They only came the last 30 million years.
Until
And
Planet of the
these
Apes.
humans were created like 500 million years ago. So there was no apes. Okay, so they literally created them. And they created them to a sense where they, like they did with the aliens today, they have a race of gray aliens where they're not so smart, but they're smart enough that they can fly ships
They're
and
not so smart.
talk to people and take orders and things like that. They did the same thing with these guys. They made humans. They didn't have to wear clothes. They had enough fur on their body to keep them warm. They kept them in a beautiful place called the Garden of Eden. It was a very nice place. It was a beautiful place full of fruits and lots of food, and everyone was happy and friendly, and no one had any problems, right? The Garden of Eden. You've heard it. It's in the books, in the Bible. What the Bible left out was there really was, at the time, there was a disagreement. There was a few angels that were upset. Their angels are a race, and they were upset with Enki and Enlil because they decided that they said, listen, these guys are pretty smart. I mean, if we just give them some knowledge,
I am
then
recording it, don't
they
worry.
won't be so stupid anymore. They can help
Yep.
us in more than one way, just rather than be slaves, because that's all humans are in the world with slaves. So Enlil thought it was a good idea, the brother, and the other brother was Enki, and he didn't think it was a good idea, and he was very upset, and he didn't want this to happen. He wanted to keep his slaves the way they were. He thought they were good enough, and he didn't want anything to happen to them. So behind their back, Azarza, which is one of the devil's names, so you say, came and said, brought his 40 angels, and they came down and started a little tiff, and they got angry at the gods, you call them, and they got annoyed, and they said no. So sneakily, they were able to shapeshift. And Azarzel went to the Garden of Eden, and he presented himself with this tree full of fruit, the apples.
Okay, so Adam and Eve.
And I don't believe it was an apple. I believe it was the type of fruit that didn't have apples back then. And
When did we start getting
the
apples?
snake spoke to the woman. That wasn't their names, by the way. They never had names, by the way.
Oh.
And Adam came because literally of the atom and the cell, an atom. Get it? That's why they named them that. So Eve decided to said, "No, Adam, this is a good idea. We can learn things from them. Remember, they can speak a little, right? We can learn things. We can do things. This is a good idea. Try. And Adam said, No. I don't think it's a good idea. We were told not to. So she thought it was a good idea, and she decided to do it. So she bit the apple, gave her knowledge. She immediately covered herself up. She coached Adam into taking the apple, the fruit. He bit it as well, and knowledge came to him as well, and immediately they started to cover themselves. What you call the devil was just an angel trying to project knowledge onto these people. So now it gets a little complicated, but what happens was, when Enki found out, he was enraged. I mean, this was so bad, Riley, that the woman that chose to take the fruit from the apple, the tree,
Take the fruit from the
she was bare a curse upon every woman on the planet. Every species of female will have to bear the burden of the pain of birth, which they didn't have to then. So she will now have to bear the pain of bearing the child, having a period, going through the emotions, having all the problems and pushing the baby out, and carrying all this for 9 months. This was our suffering, and it has never, ever ended. And I'm very angry. So because of this, they were banished. Those 20 angels were banished. And I have all their names. And all their names are nowadays are considered demons, because they chose, and they were banished, and not only were they banished, but they were banished forever from being able to be a part of Earth,
So
to
exile
be
them.
a part of goodness, to have any sort of happiness or life, to have any kind of quality of what all of us will have. They were banished because they chose not to listen to the almighty people who created them, their original creation. You can't take my children, recreate my children, and expect me not to get pissed off at you. Okay? all up, and then she expects me not to be pissed off. No, I did a good job. No, you didn't. So that's what they did. And it's not that I don't disagree with the devil for him doing that. It's just how he went about it. And maybe it would have came later, but he chose to do it then. And because of that, they kept that race. And what happened over the years, you keep hearing about floods and stuff and all these things in the Bible. Well, Moses was a big part of that. He eventually became a part of the extraterrestrials, just like Enoch. Enoch was part of that
I'm pretty
too.
sure we are the pawns.
They were human-like people, but then they became ascended. So they had more powers. And that staff he used actually was a magical staff. And he was taught how to use it. What happened was he was told to round up all the good quality animals that weren't sick, didn't have mental disabilities, people that were healthy, animals that could bring forth new generations. He was told to put them all on the ship, and the ship was not an ark. It's not a boat, okay? It was a ship.
It was a what?
It was a ship, a real ship, okay? They took them off the planet. So they decided they're going to flood the planet, and for 40 days and 40 nights, this entire fucking planet flooded. And I mean it flooded to the point where the pyramids were now, it's so high that you can actually see where the flood marks were at the top of the pyramids. You remember seeing that? It looks like it broke off. There's nothing on this planet that could break that off. No weathering could do that because there's no hurricanes, there's no tornadoes, and there's no volcanoes in that area. There's no way that could happen unless it was flooded. So this flood came just when they said it did, probably about 10 to 20,000 years ago, because we have evidence of this through icing, where the ice, and they took ice and they carbon dated it. And so when the flood ended, they got rid of all the toxic people, even including just like Atlantis. They did the same thing to Atlantis. They get rid of all the toxic, nasty, stupid humans that couldn't cope with laws. So what they did when Moses came back with Jesus, they decided that we're going to try to make this new civilization a little more knowledgeable. We're going to give them a little more intelligence and give them some rules to follow. Maybe this will help because they never had rules before. So Moses came down with the 10 Commandments and gave them to the people and said, look, if you follow these there's more than 10, but if you follow more than these rules, you'll be okay. As a society, we'll make it. We'll do good and we'll flourish on this land and we'll live well. Just follow these rules. These are what the gods gave me. So they put them on stone so that they could never be
not a fun conversation.
forgotten.
She is
They can't be
so
messed with.
racist.
They're still
You
real,
don't
and
even know.
stone will last
She
billions
thinks
of
black
years,
people are
Riley.
just white with
Billions,
sun
and
hands.
you know I know because you're walking on it. Okay? Billions of years,
I'm
rock
not
will
asking.
last.
I'm
So
just
these
saying,
stones
it's too
are
much.
super duper old. I mean, they're not 20,000, 100,000, 400. They're 400 million years old. Okay? So according to the text, later on we'll say that when Moses came, he was probably around the 100,000 year mark, or the 100 million year mark. I mean, right? And so what happened was once this happened, okay, and all these flooding came, and and remember the dove? That was a real thing that happened. The Moses is actually in the book of Enoch. They took the green tablets, they call them. And they took one of the animals that they said has a habit of bringing back things to land and pieces of things to make
she's
a
too far right
home.
now. She's too
So
far
the
gone.
dove was one of them, the type of bird, and it did. It brought back a piece of land to tell them that it wasn't far, and then they made it land, and they found the tippy top of a mountain is what they found. So that's why in some stories you'll hear about mountain archaeologists finding seashells at the top of like Mount Everest, and wondering how the fuck did they get there embedded into the rock, right? That's why, because the water level stayed that way for at least 2, 3, 4, 500 years before it subsided. And then when it finally did, society took over and began again, and I call it the time of lost knowledge. Humans call it the time of the missing link. But there is no missing link. The missing link is the alien. There's no missing link. So, and that's what happened. So when they came back, the pharaohs came back with them, and they even said they were the last of the pharaohs. We were the young ones. King Nafarafi, Tafi, whatever the names is and King Tut, they were all had their own little war issues, and they were all behaving in very bad manners, and sometimes they screwed each other's wives, and they had, oh yeah, they got lots of stories about it written on the walls and all that stuff. And so what you see is the cover-up of what once was hundreds of millions, hundreds of thousands of years ago, due to water damage. These guys came and rebuilt the pyramids to fix them.
Seal back then.
Okay? And then again, we had a flood. So the timing with 2,000 years ago, we didn't have a flood 2,000 years ago. Okay? So if you look at the timing of it, we had a flood 10,000 years ago. We had an ice age 10,000 years ago, which came in and ripped through everywhere, even Egypt. So in the time of flood, it would have to be no earlier than 10,000 to 9 to 8,000 years ago. There's no way. Okay, so with archaeology fact, Riley, even we have people who are discrepancies about the timing of those 3,000 years ago. It doesn't even make sense because the water weathering of this it would take 30,000 years to weather this, not 3. There's stones we have that are 3,000 years old in China that still look immaculate. Did you know that? They got 3,000-year-old stone homes that still look fabulous. Why do the Egyptian pyramids look like they've been through hell? There's no water.
Yo, but this doesn't answer
So,
the question about the
you have to ask yourself these questions, Riley.
Oh.
And so that leads me back to finding out the truth, that they were telling, to me, they're telling the truth when they say that the Egyptian pyramids rebuilt over to look better. They had a beautiful white casing over the top of them. They had, on the top, was like this energy stone that helped emanate from country to country, from place to place. All these pyramids for energy. It just shared it throughout the world. It wasn't. They weren't holding it back. They didn't try to make money off people. And I tell you where taxes come from, Riley. In your generation, in the 1940s and 30s, when everyone was at war, did you know they started taxing people so they could pay for the war? They didn't plan on keeping the taxes. It was only for the war. And when the war was ended, they were supposed to stop the taxes.
No.
Okay? But because they caught on to a really good thing, they just couldn't bring themselves to do it. So that's where taxes come from. So you can thank your goddamn fucking war for that too. Okay?
What is
Alright.
wrong with what is going on
Yeah.
here? I don't know.
So nothing ever good came from war. Nothing.
Yeah.
My children have heard of anybody's mess. Because my kids didn't do it, I didn't do it, and they're smart enough to know the difference. So please, stay out of other people's wars. You want to be a desk clerk? Go be a desk clerk.
What's a midichlorian?
Oh, Chris is home. I love you, Poopsie. I'll let you go.
Alright. See you, Mom. Love you.
You okay?
No!
Bye-bye.
Oh, I learned so much!
You get any other questions?
No, maybe
Yes,
later.
yes,
Maybe
yes.
later.
Alright.
Alright, see ya.
Black people,
That was a 47-minute call.
that was the best 47 minutes of my life. I am delighted.
I am so happy I recorded. I didn't start recording till like halfway through though, so I'm kind of disappointed. We were at the Egyptian part when I started.
Oh, great. That was.
I asked about pawns, and then she just.
It's his mom.
We went into the beings who created the earth, and
That's
then.
your mom? Really?
Yeah, that's my mom, dude.
Trust
Proud of
me.
me?
That's your mom?
Yeah, yeah, for real. 100%.
I'm very scared.
Yeah, that was pretty funny, huh?
I'm
Was
very
that a
impressed.
voicemail or was that really her live?
No, that was really her. Like, she called me up. I was just like, she started going on a rant, and I was just like, you know what? How about everybody else in this channel hears me too?
Can we set this up as a weekly thing?
Oh. She's writing a book about this.
Oh no, please. Please write one of those books. How much?
Right?
Back in the 80s,
She's been doing this book for the last 10 years, dude.
Jehovah's Witnesses came by and he invited
Is she
him
married?
to talk
Yeah.
about the Bible and
Is this
tell
guy
him that-
just as crazy?
No. Well, I mean, he's a narcissist, but no. He's not religious. He's like 6'4". He's a cowboy, and he's a musician.
How does this help Renton?
This is the greatest thing I've ever heard of.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
So next week, midichlorians and black people.
You
I need
set
to
that
know,
up with
I need
her,
to know what
dude.
her thoughts of midichlorians are.
Midichlorians are what they put in pools to keep the bugs away.
Oh fuck, bet.
Oh, that was fun.
I didn't know that until recently.
I looked it up. It's
Hey,
something
what's
from
her
Star
phone
Wars.
number? I'm gonna give her a call.
Wait. Ooh, my throat.
This is like a history.
Can I call her as Bane from?
She'd be like
Batman?
she'd be like the alternate history teacher, dude. Like literally the.
Ah, fire! Right? You say there's shells on Mount Everest.
Yeah, right.
Hey, Peter. I need the poison for Cusco. Cusco's poison.
Cusco's not
Oh! Pharaoh Cusco?